I am doing this webinar because I'm the undergraduate chair of the Material Science and Engineering department. And I've had quite a few people also through my entrepreneurship class let me know that their summer internships have gone away, that there had been plans to do research on campus, or they had an internship with a company, and those evaporated. And a lot of concern around, well, what next? What do I do this summer? And the other thing is that I'm a true believer that to really make a difference in the world, people need to think about how to be leaders and to build something, right? If you look at everyone around who actually is changing the world, they're able to find problems and figure out a way to solve them. And during my time, in terms of before Penn, for those of you who don't know me, I have been at Penn now for 3 years. I am a professor of practice, which means that I'm not a traditional university professor. I don't have a research group. I don't do research. I'm someone who has industry experience. And the idea is to bring in folks like me into the university so that we can bring our real world experience to all of you. And so prior to being at Penn and teaching here, I was a partner at McKinsey & Company, which is a really large management consulting firm. I was co-leading the innovation practice, so really helping companies that had spent billions of dollars in R&D figure out how to have more of an impact on that. And after doing that for 13 years, I then went to do my own startup. And so I launched my own consumer product invention onto the market. That was super fun. And then Penn tapped me on the shoulder and asked if I would consider applying to Penn in a professor of practice role. And so now I teach Intro to Entrepreneurship, which is EAS 545, the senior design for the Material Science and Engineering department. And I'm also the undergrad chair for my department. And I actually am an alum of Penn Engineering. I graduated here in 1994 in material science and engineering. So it's kind of neat coming back full circle. And then after Penn, I went to MIT to get my PhD. And then from there went to McKinsey. The thing when I went to McKinsey was, it was a really, really tough transition for me, because when you're in the academic world, you're very much focused on getting a really high GPA and really excelling in the academic world, which is really different than the real world. And the best way for me to explain this is that the pinnacle of academia is to get your PhD. The final act of getting your PhD is you defend your PhD. So automatically you have the word defend as kind of the top goal, which has a certain mindset, which is not great when you go in the corporate world. So my transition into the corporate world was really, really rough, where I had to learn how to be more collaborative, how to be a team player, not feel like I always had to be right, and ask for help when I didn't know how to do something. Whereas if you didn't know something, it was a weakness, and I had to get over those kind of things. There's a big mindset shift. And when I was at McKinsey, I spent time, and everybody does it at McKinsey because we just get so many applicants, spent a lot of time interviewing people. So at McKinsey, you're required to interview people. And so having been there for about 13 years, I saw thousands of resumes. And over my last 3 years, I always invite my students to send me their resumes. And there's a big difference between what I see as amazing resumes versus resumes which are just focused on more academic suits. So right now what you should see on a screen share is an example resume. I want you guys to take a quick look through it. And then I'm going to ask you guys to let me know what you see on this resume. And so feel free to unmute and say something.
Definitely this person has done a wide range of things. I mean, definitely has done research. I mean, has done a lot of extracurriculars. I mean, yeah, definitely this person has a rich experience just from a first glance. Yeah.
Okay. What else do people see?
Too much information.
Okay.
I feel it's all right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it looks reasonable.
Okay.
But
What about
definitely
in terms
talk
of
to
content?
go ahead.
What-
Okay.
Yeah, what about in terms of content? Hyuk, what do you see? I see you're unmuted.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that the first thing that came into my view was the sections and like how thick they were, and I saw that the leadership and volunteer experience took almost like half of the whole resume, which I
Mhm.
guess shows that she has a lot to say about maybe like stuff around leadership or like volunteer work.
Okay. What else do you guys see? I'll start picking on people. Aiden, what do you see?
Um, I was pretty surprised how short education was, but I guess that was kind of more to highlight just like her experiences rather than kind of education focused.
Okay. DNJ, what do you see?
Well, I use this as an example to change my resume, and it worked out very well. I think.
Okay. Samuel? What about you? What do you see? You're on mute. Maybe he's not there. Jillian, what do you see?
I think it's weird that they have an interest section. I've never seen an interest section on a resume.
Okay. Yep. Good observation. Asset, what about you?
I feel like on the professional experience, they can elaborate a little more on their second and third professional experience and delete a little from the leadership, because I feel like it's getting a little too long because it's actually taking up half of the page.
Yep.
Professional experience, it can be a little longer, elaborating on what you've done.
Okay. So a little bit on the formatting side. I want people to focus on the content too. Erin, what about you?
I think that it's there's like a lot of documenting of like specific numbers of people that you've like interacted with, or like exactly what you like it doesn't just say like optimize a Python model, it's like why also.
Yep. Great point. Michael?
Aaron just, there's two Michaels.
Oh, Michael.
Boy. Yeah, Aaron just said specifically what I was going to say. Like, I noticed the specific details, and especially in professional experience, that really jumps out at me. Like I did this specifically, and it's not broad or vague or anything, which I think is good.
Yep. Varun?
I think like it is more of a to-do list rather than actually saying the impact of the work. They're not discussing their impact of their work.
I think there's impact because there's a lot of numbers here, right? So 140% increase, 32K clinical files that have been, analyzed and so forth.
Oh yeah.
I think there's some impact here, which is good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Some impact is that, yes.
Bernie, what do you see?
I see a lot of text.
You see a lot.
That's so true. It's a lot.
There's a lot of bold text. All the headings are bolded, and I guess maybe that's good.
Okay. So this is good. Like the reason why I ask you guys to say something is it makes you think. If you have to say something, you actually have to think. So a couple of things I want to highlight for you, which you also started picking up on. One is education is a really, really small part of it. I know you're at Penn here to get a degree, but education is a small part of it. Even smaller is a real estate that GPA takes. Really, really small real estate in the grand scheme of things. When we read resumes, and I'm actually going to send this all to you at the end in the group chat. This is a pretty standard format that people know how to read quickly. So if you imagine you're getting a stack of 1,000 resumes, this is a pretty standard one that people can fly through. And so when I get a resume like this, it takes me about 10 seconds to go through to say, am I interested in this person? When we're reading resumes, we're not doing it in detail because we have a massive stack of them. And companies will get thousands of them, and an individual may get hundreds of them or even thousands of them to read. So when I'm reading through a resume, what I'm trying to do is figure out, can I picture this person in my head? Who is this person, right? are there ways when I'm reading through, like, wow, this person seems interesting, right? And so when you think about kind of GPA and so forth, it's not a way for me to picture in my head. Whereas here I read this person, I was like, wow, this person really has a lot of things that they are passionate about, right? They were doing research, right? They're looking to help in cancer. There was, a theme here around health because they were doing some work in a hospital. So I can really picture this person is passionate about trying to make a difference in healthcare. I also see that this person is all about diversity, right? They played some major leadership roles for the LGBTQ community, right? They actually founded something from scratch, and they have over 100 plus members, right? That's amazing. They also have founded another chapter where they're really trying to help people with disadvantages and really focused on trying to make a difference on people around them. And they weaved all that together where, oh, wow, there's another hospital, right? Volunteer thing. So I'm reading through this, I'm seeing someone who has seen a problems in the world and said, how can I have an impact and actually fix it? Gone out and actually built some things from scratch and actually have had, some impact. $1,000 in the grand scheme of things is not a lot, but $1,000 for someone who's in their early 20s and then to get over 100 plus members, that's huge. That's massive, right? And that's where I think numbers are really important to show the impact that you're having. Interests are also important. So I'm looking at this person saying, okay, this is all the stuff they did. Oh, wow, this person plays flute. So imagine, right? In my head, I'm starting to picture a person. I can now see this person's a swimmer. They also do jujitsu. And it's an interesting person. I want to get to know this person more. So literally this resume is a screen for us to see, do we want to get to know you better? And are we seeing places where you've taken a risk, where you've actually tried to build something from scratch, you've had an impact on an ecosystem around you. And if you can show that, we will put you into, yeah, let's interview you pile versus I have 3 majors, I have a 4.0 GPA. I TA'd, 7 different classes. I can do programming, and I was a member of a fraternity. I was a member of the MSc Society. I was a member of these things, right? Membership is great, but the question is, when you're a member, what are you actually doing to make a difference? And so what I would encourage you all to think about is, what is the picture that you want to paint for yourself? And understand that coursework and all that kind of stuff is okay. But the reason why it doesn't paint a picture is everyone has done coursework, right? Everyone has done a lot of things. And we know that all of you guys are smart because you're all at Penn right now. So what's much more important in terms of differentiating yourself is seeing what are you doing outside of academics to actually change and have an impact on the world. That's really the most important thing. And if you can do that, right, that's when you get excited about a candidate, because that's how the real world works, right? In the real world, I'm not going to be giving you a syllabus and saying, please take this test. And if you get the highest mark on it, you're now going to get promoted to manager. It's all this other stuff, which is much more complicated to navigate. And to give you an example, right, if you look at this Penn OSTEM, right, to actually get 100 plus members, that means you actually have to convince 100 plus people that what you're doing is really important. You actually have to convince other people to give you money towards this, right? You have faculty dinners, so you have to go reach out to faculty and cold call them, say, hey, will you come here? You then had to put together a career workshop, think about logistics of trying to get that done. All this stuff is, really hard to do. And then I look at the cooperative relationships. Wow, this person isn't afraid to go reach out to people they don't know to get them on board to actually build something with them. And that's really what I wanted you guys to see. And kind of my push for you this summer is, yeah, I know you guys are all kind of stuck at home and all that, but there's opportunities to think about ways that you could build out your passion project or something that you're really excited about. So I see some hands up. Vera, what's your question?
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying about building out your leadership and volunteer experience and how you're affecting your community. But when I'm looking at this resume, it seems like she sacrificed space in her professional experience more to elaborate on leadership experience. So I'm wondering what you think of the balance between those two, since resumes are usually like limited to 1 page.
I actually like the balance of this resume because you can show leadership in your professional experience. So professional experience is more like, if you have a job and someone's paying you, and there what you want to see is you're indicating, if possible, there where you've had a leadership role. And even more importantly, if you're kind of doing things, why, right? I think Aaron had mentioned, it was interesting, it wasn't just Optimize Python, but here's the reason why. And when you're laying all this out, it's important that we're able to paint a picture, because I can picture someone optimizing a Python model, right? You're sitting in front of a computer and coding, but most students don't say why they're doing it. Usually when I see resumes, it's I did this, I did that. It's a laundry list of activities with no personality in it or no why in it. So this why, really, really important, because what I wanted to be able to see when I read through this resume, it doesn't matter if it's in leadership or in professional, is painting a picture of what is important to this person and has this person taken risk, and it could either be professionally or leadership, to actually build something out. So in this case, most of their, a lot of their stuff was on the leadership and volunteer side, and that's totally fine. Your resume may be that you spent all your time on the professional side and you're showing the leadership side there. So totally up to you. This is just an example, a resume, but I think the key is for wherever you have clunks of things that you're doing, you want to make sure that you're not just talking about the activity, which is normally what I see from people. You also want to be talking about the why. Why is what you're doing important? What's the impact you're having? Sharing it with numbers. And then where possible, if you've really played a leadership role with trying to build something out, like relationships or creating, different groups to come together, making sure that's coming out as well. Does that answer your question, Vera?
Yeah, thanks.
Abhinav, I see your hands up.
Yeah, so one question I had was, like, this resume has a wide range of things, and as you said, like, it seems to be focused in the space of healthcare and also diversity, but when does it sort of become contrived? Because I also noticed, I hate to break it, but I've seen a lot of students who do a lot of things, but the question I have sometimes is maybe it's fewer but in depth sometimes better, because doing a lot of things just to basically make your resume look good for like medical school applications, at least I feel like that's just sort of putting yourself sort of to something that you may not necessarily want to do, right? So how do you sort of make that decision sort of in the first place when you're sort of trying to say, okay, when I come to Penn, right, what kind of experiences do I want to have? Do I want to focus on a few things a lot, or do you want to just do a lot of things? Like, that's the thing, like, how do you sort of allocate your time and resources?
I will say that the most important thing is you should only do things because you love it. Do not do things because you're trying to pad out a resume. That makes no sense. What I will say is that you should figure out what you love and then play a leadership role there, right? And if you end up spending all of your time on one experience, that's amazing. That's fine. Like, I see a lot of resumes where people spend all their time building out a startup while they're in university, and there's nothing on the resume except for that startup, because that startup was taking all of their time outside of class. But the way that is organized is there might be clunks around, here's the things we did around fundraising, right? And there might be, fundraising. There might be another thing around product development and technology. And so you can use up the resume, because the space on the resume to actually indicate the different things that you were doing. And with a startup, you're wearing multiple hats. There's a lot of different things. And so you're showing a very rich experience. And so the key here is not to collect a lot of things. The key here is to pull together a resume that's coherent. And what I mean by coherent is I can paint a picture of what is it that you love. And I saw that you took a risk to actually try to build something. And building something does not have to be a startup, right? It doesn't have to be, organization within Penn that you're trying to drive. It could be anything, right? I will say a lot of people who do Penn Electric car racing already have an incredible resume, because they are doing a lot of things on teamwork and building and trying to orchestrate things where that thing is pretty amazing. And oftentimes that may be the only thing that's a resume. So I think the key thing for you is to think about, how do you thoughtfully have a resume that represents your passion? But whatever your passion is, I'm going to push all of you to not just be a member of something, you should be asking yourself, if I'm doing something, have I made a difference in an ecosystem and in people's lives? What can I point to where, because of the efforts I've made, we actually can see the world's changed a little? Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yes.
Good questions. Other questions? Does this feel intimidating to people?
Can I ask
And
one
to
more
be
question?
honest- Yes, Abhinav, go ahead.
So I was going to say, like, I know some of us, at least like for me, especially being in biker, like our sort of undergrad experience has been a heavy emphasis on research. But the thing is, if you've done a lot of research, how do you turn research into something that could help you show that you could thrive in the professional world? So let's say I've done, yeah.
So with research, it's really important to say why you're doing the research. Okay.
Yeah.
So being in someone's lab and doing research, there has to be a why around it. If you don't have the why, then you should go and start cold calling, right? And understanding the real world out there and saying, hey, I'm doing research in this. What is it that I actually could be having impact on in the world on, right? And being able to frame that is really important. And so if you're not sure why you're doing the research, right? Like you're not sure how it's going to change the world, then really kind of push the professor that you're working with, or even come to talk to me about it and say, I don't know how to think about this. I don't know how I'm having an impact. And I will say that, one thing I wish I had done when I was getting my PhD is I wish I had spent some time going out in the real world and talking about the research I was doing and seeing how it could make a difference. And then starting to build out some of that ecosystem to see if I could start testing some of that as I was getting my PhD. And so even though you're doing research, and Viper's great because you already have a theme. Like I can already picture a Viper student, which they're very much interested in energy, right? And sustainability. And so you should be building that out. So then, in addition to research, what other things, are you doing, right? In order to build out that interest in energy. Is there part of an energy club that you've been doing where you pull together a conference because there's not been enough work done on, say, fusion, right? I know there's one student very interested in fusion. So should we be pulling together that? So it doesn't have to be huge necessarily, but I would push you guys to think, where might there be holes somewhere in whatever I'm trying to do, and then build it out. And then the Viper side, I would say, do one more thing in addition to research to show that you're rounding yourself out. Because even though you're doing research, you don't have to be in the lab 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's a lot of time out there. I will also say for all of you first years and sophomores is taking lots of courses for the sake of taking lots of courses is not helpful at all. It will not differentiate you. I know there's a lot of pride around taking a lot of courses where you can say, oh, I'm taking 6 courses this semester, 7 courses a semester. And then you can, feel good that you're loading yourself more than other people are. But when you look at resumes, it doesn't matter, right? What matters more is the richness and have you actually had an impact. When you're taking classes, all it's doing is challenging you, right? In terms of how much extra homework can you do, and can you study efficiently to get a high GPA while doing that, but you actually are not having impact around you. So I actually graduated from Penn with exactly 40 credit units, no more, no less. And 25 years ago, my entire class graduated with exactly 40 credit units. The only person who did not graduate with exactly 40 credit units was the guy who was M&T. And he took 5 years to graduate and got whatever, number of units was required for M&T back then. So I'm seeing an unhealthy trend with people loading themselves with courses because they're not sure what else to do. And what I would really encourage you to do instead is take the courses you need, take some courses, additional courses if you are interested in it. But I would much rather you spend that extra time and actually build something. I think that's much more important. Other questions?
This is a more like simple one, but when do you take high school off of your resume?
When you don't have other things to say, you would keep it on. Right? I would say that once you've graduated, high school doesn't really matter. It could be more a little bit of a interest or kind of background thing, which is sometimes it's nice for people to see what high school you went to in case they went to it, and then like, oh, that's kind of neat, right? We went to the same high school. But there are some high school experiences that are kind of rich, right, that you might want to keep there. But I would imagine and hope that by the end of your Penn experience, you've done enough where you actually don't need to keep your high school in there. But I would say probably freshman, sophomore year, you probably have to keep it on there because you're still building things out. But I really push you guys by the end of by the end of your time at Penn, to have a resume where you don't have to put high school on there. Good question. Other questions?
I heard that, well, actually I saw how like resumes could really differ, like the style of resumes could really differ according to what industry or like what type of, I guess, like company that you're applying into. Are there like any like really drastic resume differences that you could think of right now?
The only drastic major ones might be if you're going to something really technical, you may want more of the relevant coursework. And so the relevant coursework may take, 2 or 3 lines. If you are, say, going into, say, engineering consulting, right, where that they're really into failures, mechanical failures, you might want to be highlighting those kind of things. And so you can tailor this based on the amount of technical depth you may want to go into things. And so in a case like that, on the professional experience with the research, you may get into more the nitty gritty of the technical stuff that you did. So you might talk about specific instruments that you learned to use, specific processes that you had developed. But I will say that even for more technical type of roles, they also are looking for leadership qualities as well. And the reason why is that even when you're doing technical research, you are going to be asked to solve a big problem with no guidelines on how to do it. So if I see that you're actually able to lobby a bunch of different people around you on some leadership or volunteer experience, I'm like, okay, great. This person will know how to go and ask for help and go find the people that can help them have an impact. But I think on the technical side of it, you may want to go a little deeper if you're going into a technical engineering type of role. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question also, because you said that, you might have already explained it, but you said that this resume is more like a standard example and what everybody uses. So is it better to have the same kind of style of resume, or is it better to make a different one?
Great question. It depends what you're applying for. I will say that if you're going into normal career fair type of situations, I would do this. And the reason why is I know how to read this resume. We've all been trained to read this resume format. So when I see this resume format and I'm spending 10 to 15 seconds on a resume, I literally, when I got my stack of resumes, would have a red pen next to me and circle things on what I found interesting and highlight stuff and put into piles. Because normally what would happen, I'd have a stack of resumes. I would then cut it to the folks that I thought were kind of interesting, but then I would have a target number that I was allowed to submit forward for interviews. And then I would go through the initial screening pile to kind of highlight my favorite ones and then go. And so when there's a standard resume, it's easy for me to quickly pick things out and I'm not annoyed because I don't have to try to figure out how to read your resume. But if you're going to a company that is more creative, I think creative resumes can be very helpful. But I think if you're going to the normal career services type of track where people are seeing thousands of resumes, something like this is a lot easier for them to digest. And you want to make it as easy as possible for the person who is reading it to understand you. But if you're going into a more creative one, you probably want a more creative resume. This is not a creative format resume. This is a easy to read, let me share with you who I am resume. So you can do that in 15 seconds.
Got it. Thank you.
Good questions. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So,
Yep.
I guess I'm wondering, what would you say to like a student who maybe isn't entirely sure of what they're passionate about or what they want to build. And I could say for myself that maybe I have a vague idea, but I don't know where to start, or it can be daunting to sort of commit yourself to something you're not sure if you will like.
Can we go deep a little bit on this? I think it'll be helpful to go through this. So give me an idea of what your vague idea is.
Oh, I mean, for me, it's like energy sustainability, but that's such a broad topic, so I don't know where to even begin.
Yeah, so I think the key thing for you, if it's around energy and sustainability, right, is I would start trying to narrow it a little bit, right, around, because that's a pretty big area, right? You know, are you interested in food waste, right, and trying to, you know, help with the food supply chain? Are you interested in trying to find more sustainable packaging? Is it more alternative energy sources like solar and trying to get that going? I think you should try to pick one. And you guys are so young right now, even if you pick one, it doesn't mean you can't do other stuff later. And then what you then want to do is, once you've picked one of these, is ask yourself, okay, let me learn a little bit about what's going on in the world, and let me start networking. So I would encourage all of you to have a LinkedIn profile. How many of you have a LinkedIn profile? Just raise your hand if you have a LinkedIn profile. Okay. For those of you who don't, you have to get a LinkedIn profile. That is my #1 action for you after this, is to pull together your LinkedIn profile, and feel free to LinkedIn with me, because that is how a lot of professional things are happening. And then what you then should do, Michael, is start reaching out to people in the area that you've picked and start cold calling. I will tell you that not enough young people are actually reaching out to older people like us to understand what are some of the problems out there in the world. And you're not going to know what's interesting to you if you don't talk to other people. And so all of you should be talking to as many people as possible. And because young people don't often reach out, when they do, I'm always interested in talking to them. We'll give them, like, you know, 15 minutes of my time to just, you know, pick their brain a bit. And when you start doing that, you'll just start creating a network and an understanding of what's going out there. So I think part of the reason why it's hard for you to understand what you're interested in is that you don't know anything right now. You just know energy sustainability is a big thing. So the only way to really get a sense of what you would like is you actually need to throw yourself out there and start reading things, start talking to people. I hesitate to say the word read, because a lot of engineers like to sit and read research papers, do a little reading, but not a lot. What's better is actually start talking to people. Start talking to professors at Penn who are doing work in energy and sustainability. The Climate Energy Center is great. They have a lot of speakers coming through. You guys should be going to as many speaking events that you can go to. Philadelphia is incredible in terms of not even just Penn, but Philly more broadly. When we're past this pandemic, has incredible speakers that come by. And there are all kinds of environmental sustainability type of organizations. There is SBN, which is a Sustainable Business Network. And Michael, I can put you in contact with someone on the board there, so you can understand more what are people doing in Philly around sustainability. So I think there's a lot of things that you should start doing right now to start getting a sense of what you like. Then once you have a chance to network and talk to a bunch of people, just look for opportunities, right? Are there opportunities to do research, right, with someone who is in the area of sustainability and energy? You may not be 100% sure that's something that you love, but just try it. It's only a summer, it's only a few weeks, it's only a semester, right? At least you can see if that's the thing you like. And if you end up doing it saying, I don't like it, that's good to know. You cross it off your list, and then go from there. And so I would really push you right now, you know, with everyone who's at home, is to pull together a LinkedIn profile and start reaching out to people in areas that you're interested in, and then seeing what are some problems they have. So when you go and network people, ask them, you know, what are the problems you're solving at your company right now? You know, what are some of the big, you know, things that matter? And right now, even asking questions like, if you start building a rapport with someone, say, is there any way I can help you this summer, right? You know, I've got time on my hands. Are there certain, you know, ways that, you know, my skill set can be helpful? And 99 times out of 100, they will say no. You just need that one. So that's the other thing you need to be okay with, is reaching out to people. Nobody replies back. But if 2 people reply back, Those 2 people will then connect you to another few people, and then you'll start building it out. If you ask 99 people and 99 people say, no, I have no use for you this summer, that's okay. You just need that one person. So that's the other thing you need to be okay with, is not being afraid to reach out to people and ask if you can help them some way. Does that help, Michael?
Very much. Thank you.
Okay, Hyuk, I saw your hand up, Hyuk.
Yeah, actually I had 2 things. First one was actually, could you also, so I'm also in the Viper program and I'm really interested in specific like energy and that part. Would you like with Michael, could you also like, I guess like connect me with SPN over at Philly, because I didn't even know that there was such a thing. And
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that.
thank you. And yeah. Okay, the second question was, so right now, most likely I feel like this summer I will be staying where I am right now, which is in Korea. And I was thinking of also like kind of like cold emailing a lot of like energy places, especially like energy startups, especially because like I took the engineering entrepreneurship course right now. So
the best course ever, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just joking.
Yeah. No, it was. It really is. And yeah, so I know that there's really like a difference between the, I guess like the industry culture for pertaining to like different countries. I know that like I've heard a lot about cold emailing in the States and like how it's okay. But then I was worried that like if you know anything like about like the Asian market, where like maybe cold emailing all right, because I feel like especially like in Korea there's a lot about like, I guess like courtesy and all the little processes and bureaucracy stuff.
Yeah, so so I grew up in Hong Kong, right? So I'm a little familiar with the Asian culture. I think part of it is, ask yourself, who do you know? Like, who do your parents know? Who do other people know that can give you an intro, right? That might be a little less intimidating for you. And also, especially South Korea, a lot of the companies there are pretty used to Western way of doing things as well. And so maybe starting to network into places like Samsung and others, right? And asking, are there people there that, can network you into situations? And so I think, that's the way I would think about it, is kind of making some connections. And worst case scenarios, you cold call or cold email and they ignore your email because it's not part of the culture. That's okay. But cast a wide net, right? Like even with the time zone difference, you can still try to network in with people in Europe and in the US, right? You'll just have to be a little bit creative about when you're actually having those calls.
Okay, thank you.
Varun, you have a question?
Yeah, Professor. So I've cold emailed people before for asking for an opportunity, but I can you please share some advice on how to reach out to how to cold email people? What are the things to cover? What do you want to communicate? How to initiate a conversation and not put everything I write itself in the first email? So can you share some advice on that?
Yeah. So one thing you want to do is make it short, right? And the thing that I find works really well for me personally, and by the way, it may not work for everybody. So you kind of, need to figure out stylistically what works for you and then what might work for the recipient, is when someone sends me a note and says, hey, I had a chance to see what you've been doing. And, I'm a young 22-year-old, right, who right now is stuck at home with their parents because my summer internship was taken away. And I know, I'd be really inspired to learn a little bit more about X, Y, and Z from you, right? I know you're really busy, but I know that at one point you were 20 as well, right? And trying to reach out to really important people like you. So I really only want 15% of 15 minutes of your time because it's actually kind of scary for me right now to be cold emailing you. But I have professors that I should try it. So I'm really hoping you're going to respond back. And I would do that because I will tell you that there's something endearing when you're being honest. And that's the thing I will tell you is, like, if you can learn an authenticity and being able to kind of be authentic around calling a spade, I find that kind of endearing. And so whenever someone sends me a really heartfelt email like that, I will take it. I will tell you the cold call ones I don't take are, people who are hard selling me. Someone who's hard selling me on something and has to get my time and tells me they need to meet with me next week at this time. Those ones I don't take, right? And so I think just be yourself, and you guys are young now, so be a little bit endearing too. I think that's a good way to go. Does that help?
Definitely, yes. Thank you so much.
Okay. And the other thing too, is reach out to me. Like I'm actually thinking right now, because I think there's quite a few people interested in energy, is having my husband try to help as well with some of the stuff, right? Or maybe we can do some cold intros, and maybe I'll also have him do some kind of guest lecture, because he's the head of energy waste and facilities maintenance for Walmart. And so I think having him share with you a little bit what's going on in the industry could be helpful. And so maybe that's something I'll do across the engineering school for anyone interested in energy. And then try to see if we can help, get some of the networks going. And so Varun, if there's like specific areas that you want to network into, also LinkedIn stalk me and see if there's, some connections that might be helpful.
Yeah.
And I'll try to, help you through that.
Cool. Thank you.
Michael, do you have another question?
No, it seems like my hand is stuck in the raised position.
Okay, let me look. I have a lower hand. I have a question here in the chat room. Rebecca, you want to share your question?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it was kind of what you were talking before about kind of doing a non-traditional method of seeing who's out there and reaching out to people and looking at opportunities. So especially now, since I think it's a lot harder, like since everyone's internships are getting canceled, and we kind of have to see what else we can come up with to gain some sort of experience during the summer. I guess I just wanted if you could elaborate a little bit more on like how you figure out who to reach out to within the industry you're interested. Like, is anyone like as many people as I can? Is that the best strategy, or should I be like looking at like more managers or directors or like HR? Like, what would be like the main, like the best way to get their attention?
I guess the question I would have is, what are you trying to get their attention for?
Well, I guess there's two different types of I guess like one way would be to like just learn more about what they do so that I can get a better idea of like what I want to do. But I think right now my main focus is to see if they have any opportunities or any help that I can do to them. Like honestly, at this point, it like I know that there's still jobs out there and that are remote and are available, but it just feels kind of overwhelming and like hard to get, just because everyone's in the same boat, and like that might not have been something that I necessarily would have wanted in the first place. So like I'm kind of like switching my interest due to this whole situation. So it's like hard to even like cold call someone when you're kind of asking, like it makes sense to ask if they need any help, but I feel like that's not enough to get their attention, and I wouldn't know like who to ask.
So let me tell you this, and this is Vanessa Chan's opinion on things, right? So talking to a lot of people. So that's the other thing I'm going to tell you is I'm kind of telling you my personal opinions on a lot of different things, right? This is not gospel. This is not the recipe book and what you have to do. This is my personal opinion. You need to go talk to lots of different people to figure out both what your resume should look like, as well as kind of what advice to do. So don't take this as gospel truth. This is kind of my advice. I would say right now that trying to cold call people to get a summer job is not the most effective use of your time. To what you've highlighted is most jobs and internships, a lot of them have been taken away. Right now, a lot of people are worrying about paying their current employees, right? So you see in the news all the furloughs that are happening. The economy is in a really hard situation right now because we're not going out, right? We're not spending money. And so there's just a lot of uncertainties in the current jobs that people already have. So as such, I really want to push you guys to not try to find an opportunity out there, because I don't think they're needle in haystack. I don't think you're going to spend so much time and get so frustrated looking for an opportunity this summer that someone can create for you. It's much better for you to create your own opportunity. So let me give you, another thing to think about, which is, Michael and Hyoke talked about how they're both interested in energy. What if you guys were to combine forces and this summer pull together an energy institute, right? where you're now going to go find luminaries and say, look, we have a bunch of Penn students right now and engineers across the world who are kind of stuck. We would like to host a series of webinars, right, around energy. And then what your ask at that point is not to kind of talk to them for 15 minutes to learn what the problems are. You're going to tell them you're going to get them an audience of hundreds of people. And then it gives you the excuse to reach out to people and say, will you give me 1 hour of your time to come talk to a bunch of students, right? And that is a kind of cool way to cold call, because there's a specific ask. You're telling that person that now there's going to be something that's bigger, right, than just a phone call from you. And it could be kind of cool. And so, you know, Rebecca, kind of going back to your specific question is, I think it depends on what your ask is. I think all of you guys now should be creative around building something out of your house, right? And all of you can. I mean, there are ways to figure out what you have passion for and see if you can start really pushing on that. So Rebecca, is there a certain thing that you're interested in?
Well, it used to be research, but that's not really doable right now because you can't really do
What
research
is your
remotely.
area? So research of what?
So I'm a bioengineer, and I've done a little bit of different things. So some of it has been more material science based, and some of it has been more like synthetic biology based. So I don't really have like a specific yet, but I did want to like find some sort of intersection between like research and some sort of like management within industry, which is why I was like excited about my internship. But so obviously like I'm not going to ask all of that of the world right now. Like obviously things changed and like I would have to adapt a little too. So it's just like hard to like find my next new like interest so that I can figure out something. Like you're right, it doesn't necessarily happen. I don't have to find an opportunity or like a job, but it's just hard to like take a step back and then figure out like what is my next interest that I can still pursue that is remote and I can like figure something out. Like it's just hard to like take a step back and understand like where to go from now.
So what I will say is that wanting to do something that is going to fit into a professional experience thing is going to be really hard this summer, which is where when I'm asking you what you're interested in, I want all you guys to think a little broader than that. Or let me ask it a little bit differently is, what could you do from your home right now to have an impact in something, right? And when we start reading resumes that are related to this time period, what's going to jump out are people who have been very entrepreneurial and innovative and have done something which is totally orthogonal to what they normally would have done because they were trying to have an impact somewhere, right? And so, you know, are there, you know, opportunities where, you know, if you're a sewer, right, can you start making masks, right, for people? If you are someone who is really passionate about trying to empower youth on science, or, you know, be a role model to younger girls, right, on science, is there a way you might want to think about creating a summer camp, right, that has to do with bioengineering? Because I can tell you right now that one huge issue is, and I have an 11 and 14-year-old, is summer camps are likely not going to be happening. And right now they're on online school, which is fine, but you're going to have thousands, if not millions of parents who are like, what do I do with my kid this summer? They're stuck at home and it's unproductive. So I think there's huge opportunities also to start creating some really fun online summer camps for students who are stuck at home. So that's really when I'm asking, what are you interested in? I want you guys to think much, much, much more broadly and do something that you have no idea how to do. I know none of you know how to do an online summer camp. That's okay. That's the point of all this, is you're going to learn to do something that you have no idea how to do. Does that answer your question, Rebecca?
Yeah, it did.
Okay. And so I think that's the key for all of you is, where are there some problems in the world today? And they could be as simple as kids stuck at home, right? You guys are all engineers and scientists. What are some of the cool things that you could do? Go back to when you were in high school, right? Were there things that you wish existed in high school that didn't exist? Can you build it now for kind of middle school and high school kids? Are there areas where, I was talking to one student where she's an engineer and she feels like there's not enough representation of Indians in media and in a lot of books that she reads. And so she's going to think about how to actually create a blog or a podcast around that this summer. And then potentially even writing a book where there's an Indian protagonist in the middle of it. And so that she can try to go publish it. So in some ways this summer, I know it doesn't sound like it, but you need to see the silver lining. It can be a gift. It's forcing people to think creatively around how to have an impact on the world. And that's really what I'm trying to push you guys on, is think really creatively on where can you make a difference and how can you mobilize people to go do that. You know, give you an example of this is one of my students, she saw there's a need for all these face shields. And so she's been mobilizing with a professor in MEME to actually get an entire DIY supply chain set up for face shields, which are now being delivered to hospitals, right? And a lot of that was around orchestration. She actually was not 3D printing herself, but she was trying to figure out how to orchestrate and mobilize people on that. And it's led to a lot of great impact in the world. And also some amazing press for the efforts that they've had. So it doesn't have to be a skill set that is directly related to your major. I think the fact that you guys can mobilize, organize, that those are the most, you know, important leadership qualities that you can start building out. Other questions? Anyone have ideas that they want to brainstorm about? So while people are thinking about that, I'm going to send you guys 2 files right now via the Zoom chat. I think I'm going to, let me see if I can do it. Which is, one is the resume, so you guys have it. And then the other is, I put together a memo because I was getting asked too many times to read resumes where the resumes all had the same things that were an issue. And so I'm going to send you a 2-page memo I wrote on how to have a resume written that is a little more impactful than just a laundry list of things that you should be doing. And so there I have specific examples of how to move from, say, an activity list to things that you're having impact on and so forth. And so hopefully you guys got that and can download it. Any other questions?
Right. Can I
Yep,
ask? So I was going to ask, so like for people who are going to be seniors next year, who are doing senior design. So the thing is, since there's a lot of uncertainty over the fall semester, would you recommend anything for us, perhaps, that we could do over the summer, since our summers are also like all over the place? Like we might have extra time, perhaps, this summer to do even more.
I mean, I think if you want to start your senior design thing because you're passionate about, do it, right?
Yeah.
But right now, I am not at all in a mode of planning for whatever scenarios. There's so many scenarios of how the fall could look that I think planning to do senior design because, you know, you're worried that, you know, we're going to be remote and other things like that. Who knows where the world's going to be? So I would say instead focus on doing something that you love. And if your senior design project is something you want to start now, and there's a way to do it effectively remotely, then go ahead and start. But don't do it because you're worried about some scenario in the fall.
Ah, okay.
I had a question, like, or not really a question, but like, I guess like ideas on brainstorming and like how to approach like building something in the summer. And I'm sort of rambling right now, but I think one of the really cool stories that I hear is like when people like build something in their garage. Like for example, like a lot of big startup companies in Silicon Valley were started in a garage. But my interest is in something that's very much lab based. Like I want to do materials. So I was wondering like how would you approach doing something like that, like on your own, when the resources that you have don't necessarily like aren't necessarily enough, you know?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's impossible to do materials research without a lab. And so I think it would be more kind of where I was pushing before around, if you're interested in research, are there things that you can be doing around, if you know what the technology is, right? Trying to understand how that technology can be applied and really start building out some pretty strong use cases of it. Because I would say normally in academia, people focus more on the really cool technology and the hard stuff to make and the hard stuff to do from a science standpoint. They're not thinking as much about how this might apply in the real world. So the summer could be a fun time understanding what technology is out there today, what are the problems with it, what does the ecosystem or the customers need, and then that could help you then shape your research when you come back in the fall, right, of what you need to do. And so that's kind of where I would push you. I would also say that it might be fun to, you know, figure out if there's kind of systems that you might want to build, right? And so if there's some material science research that you're doing that might be related to, say, solar cells, maybe you start ordering a bunch of solar cell kits and start understanding how those things work, right? So I think it's really being a little bit creative around how can you learn something new and push yourself in your garage or in your living room, right? To actually build out certain skill sets. And I will tell you that if you can start learning to cold call, if all of you at the end of this summer are comfortable networking and cold calling and talking to people, that's huge. Because I will tell you the majority of engineers I know are not there, engineering students, myself included. When I graduated from Penn, there was no way that I was ever going to cold email. Well, we wouldn't have emails then, but there was no way I was going to, you know, walk up to some random stranger and talk to them about something or ask for something. So if you guys can get over that mental thing, I think that's really important. Hyuk, I see your hands up.
Oh yeah, it's not really a question. It was, I guess, just kind of like something that I wanted to say about like not being able to do research. So it was a few years ago, like I was really interested to like the concept of like fog collecting, where they like you could like literally like kind of like liquidize like the fog and then make it into like drinkable water, which was, I guess, really helpful for like people in the mountain range. But then I found out that it was really expensive for people, for like students like me to like actually make it. I think it was like a few $100, and it didn't really make a lot of water. So one thing that I did was like really look into the scientific concept and like how it actually captured the fog droplets. And then later on, what I did was like I used, instead of like one of those like professional meshes that they use, I just used those meshes that come with onions, which was like 10 cents, I guess. And then I used like broken chairs as like the poles on the side. And then in the end, it only took like $15 for, instead of like the whole like $700 official kit. So I guess that was one experience that I had that might be relatable.
I think that's a great example, right? Which is think about what is it that you can do that is cheap and easy at home. And, you know, let me give you an example of this, right? Which is, you know, when I started my company, which is Redesign, it was all about trying to solve things that just bugged me. And the thing that really bugged me was tangled headphones. And so I started off by understanding the science behind knots. There's all these PhD papers around how knots form. And what's really interesting about it is the likelihood of a knot forming is much lower if the string is shorter or if it's fatter. And so when I understood the mathematics behind knots, I started kind of playing around with headphones and saying, well, if I was to have a clip around it, right, is that a way that it won't tangle? And since I make jewelry, I started, you know, playing around with different ways to do clipping on my own headphones that were at home. I started making these kind of rough prototypes. I had a pretty good sense then of what I wanted to do when I figured out the magnetic thing. I then went to Alibaba online and put together RFP, so request for proposal and quotes on manufacturing headphones in China. I reached out to a bunch of those people, pulled together a Kickstarter campaign, and did all of that. You guys can all do something really, really, really similar in your house this summer. Where is there a pet peeve that you have where you're like, wait, wow, I wish this product was different. I wish I could change it, and then start trying to build that out. right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be related to your major. It could be, you know, something as simple as the onion sack, right? And trying to harvest fog. But I will tell you that when you do something like that, your resume is going to jump out compared to, you know, other resumes that are out there. Varun, do you have a question?
Yeah. So this is slightly off topic, but because I'm part of Penn Engineering Entrepreneurship, I'm asking this. So how do you find a tech a co-founder if you want to do something when you're at campus? And can you share some?
Just start emailing people and asking.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I will tell you, Varun, what year are you?
First year graduate.
First year graduate. Okay, so what you should do is figure out, are there listservs where other first year graduates are, right? That you can go and ping them. There also is on Slack, there's a bunch of channels for the Penn startup community, including a Penn centered one. And so you can post to there as well.
Yeah, Penn Venture Lab. Yeah, I'm part of it. Yes.
Yeah, so I think just say, hey, I have this idea and I'd like to find co-founders. The other thing to let you guys know, which is totally not advertisement, but just let you guys know, is I actually created a new course this summer. It's going to be EAS 408. So it's aimed to undergrads, but it's basically, it's called Building Leadership, and it's going to be helping everybody who has a pet project that they want to build out for 10 weeks to take this course. So I'll kind of structure it in a way to help you guys build something from scratch. The prerequisite is you have to have your idea. I'm not going to give you your idea, but if there's an idea of something you want to go do and you want to have a structured way to work with other people on it, then take this class, because I'm limiting it to 20 people. We'll have a bunch of guest speakers coming through, and then I'll structure a way trying to help you guys get and build something. So in case you guys are interested, that is going through the course review right now. It was approved, so it should be up and running in a few days, so you can register for that. Hyuk, another question?
Yeah, this is kind of very off topic, but do you know like any, I guess, like financial support for financial support for like the summer courses?
I think there is. I think there is. So to reach out to the financial aid. I heard that there will be financial support for summer classes.
So do you know if like they apply to people even though like they're not like receiving financial aid for, like,
I think reach out. This is such a weird time right now. Just similar to cold calling, the worst they say is no.
Okay.
Right. So
Gotcha.
just reach out and say, hey, I need financial aid for this. Is it possible? I think the school, I have to say Penn is pretty amazing around really trying to mobilize around people. And so I think the school is recognizing that summer, if you're planning to, you know, have a job and make money, and now that's gone, you want to take courses, that might not have been within your budget. So I think they're trying to be as helpful as possible when it comes to financial aid.
Okay. So thank you.
Yep. Varun, another question, or is that an old hand? Okay, Rebecca.
I just wanted to follow up on that. Not really about the funding, but just like how to decide if we should take summer classes or not. Just because, like, I mean, I would love to have an idea where I create something on myself this summer and do something really cool. But like, in case that doesn't happen, I would rather do something than nothing, I guess. Which is not a great motivation for classes. So it's just kind of, I'm at a standpoint where I don't really know how to make that decision.
I think that if you are taking a class so that it could create room for you in the fall to do other stuff, maybe, you know, do it. I think that taking a class because you have nothing better to do is not like you say the best option, which is where I really want to push all of you guys. Even though you're at home and you don't have a, you know, thing that's been delivered to you, think creatively about where you might be able to have an impact. And I know you haven't thought about it. You've had like an hour to think about it. You've had one person push you on it, but you have until May 26th, right? When classes start to think. That's a whole month. So use this month to ask yourself, is there somewhere I can have an impact in the world where I'm passionate enough? It doesn't be like your pure passion. Maybe passion is the wrong word. It makes it sound like this, oh my gosh, this is the thing I love, right? It has to be something that interests you. Do you have something that's interesting to you that could make a difference in the world? And you guys have a month to think about it before you take classes. And so I would really hope that there's something that you can think of, and I'm happy to, you know, brainstorm with you on it. But that would really be where I would encourage you guys to go, because taking a class in the summer isn't really going to differentiate yourself either. And it's just going to get subsumed into the education GPA. So when you start looking at the real estate of your, resume, there's not really going to be a lot there to be seen.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Any other questions?
Wait, I have a quick question. Like regarding your summer course, you talked about we have to pay the Penn summer, like kind of, we have to sign up for summer courses and then we have to pay for that one course, right?
Yeah, so it's a course I'm
clarify.
offering that is 1 credit unit to basically help people who want a little more structure and want to get a credit out of it to build something out.
Makes sense.
But you can do this on your own. You don't need to take the summer course, but I had a bunch of students saying this would be really, really helpful if there was a course like this. And so that's why I'm doing this. There's some people who prefer a class where twice a week and, you know, having a cohort to work with feels a lot less scary for them.
Begin shortly. Please remain on the line.
All right, makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, well, guys, thank you all for your time. I really hope that all of you are being safe and staying well, and keep your chins up. Everything's going to be fine. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any other follow-up questions. But it was good seeing all of you, and we'll talk soon.
Oh, where is it that you said that you were going to post the syllabus list and the sample, not syllabus, sorry, resume, and the sample resume that you showed us?
Did you guys get it? I sent it as a file in the chat. So go to the chat and go up. Did you guys get it?
I didn't get it.
It's on the chat.
Go to the chat and you type click to open.
I joined in a little bit late, so I don't know if that did
Okay,
anything.
can you send me an email offline and I will send that to you.
Okay, sounds
And I
good.
think everyone had to register for this class, and so maybe I'll send it to you guys by email as well.
Where in the chat is it?
Sorry?
Where in the chat is it? The link.
I see it where others who saw it. Where do you guys see it? I see it in the chat.
So it's in the chat and it was uploaded on 12:54. I guess local time 11:54.
So what I'll do is, it sounds like it didn't work for some people, so I will email it all to you guys, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, take care, guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.